All right. Peace and love, everybody. I hope that you are all well on this 28th day of November 2021. Um, yeah. so, our topic for today is dealing with it's dealing with light, right? It's dealing with the light. And the kind of the topic is giving yourself permission to be liked, right? um and there's kind of a context earlier today, early this morning. I spoke at Transforming Love Community, and it was under the title Rise and Shine. um and some of the things that I'm going to share today or this afternoon are similar to what I shared this morning. um, we are here, in the midst of uh, holiday season. Um, you can see, my Christmas tree in the screen. Tonight is the beginning of Hanukkah in the Jewish tradition. We've got the New Year coming up. We just this past Thursday had Thanksgiving, and you know, Johnny Mathis said it's the most wonderful time of the year. I hear him singing that in my head right now. But for many people, it's not necessarily such a great time. For people, I know multiple people who have very recently just uh, in the last week who've had close loved ones make their transition and pass, and I know that they're feeling sadness and some heaviness as it. Have felt some sadness and heaviness as it relates to that. I know that there are plenty of people who um, go through feeling lonely at the holidays. People from other loved ones who've passed on. Maybe they passed on at this time of the year. Maybe this is their first Christmas without somebody. Maybe just the reality of, um, feeling some degree of loneliness. There are people who are dealing with different things, and I was surprised yesterday. I even had some of that come on myself, where I've just felt this heaviness as I was kind of preparing to speak today and dealing with the topic. And it's not uncommon for me to experience uh, the thing that I'm getting ready to talk about, or the difficulty in my own life attached to what it is that I'm getting ready to speak about. And so that was very much my experience yesterday. Thank God. Um, Last night I was feeling much, much better, and I'm feeling much, much better today as well. But yeah, I mean, it was just this deep heaviness, and I um, I know that that's something that is difficult for a lot of people. Whether it's during the holiday season or at any time. The reality is that we're called to be light. We're called to be light. Scripture says that we are children of the light. You know, for those who choose God and choose to walk with God, you know, you are a child of the light. Curly Conscious King, greetings to you, my brother. Good to see you as always. Um, we're children of the light, and we're called to be light. Now, the reality is that we have different life experiences that don't feel so light, right? And that shows up in a couple of in a couple of different ways. It shows up in a couple of different ways. Sometimes we have things that cause our heart to feel heavy, that cause us to feel a little down, get in the drudges, and so to speak, and cause us to feel just heavy, burdened, right? And there are a variety of things that cause us to feel, to keep from feeling light. They cause us to feel burdened, right? Some of the things that cause us to feel weighed down: guilt, feelings of guilt, cause our heart to be heavy. Shame, you know, definitely creates a sense of heaviness. Maybe guilt about things that you've done, things that you wish you had done that you didn't do. Maybe shame about, which is even on a deeper level, about things that you've done or things that have been done to you or that have happened to you. That creates a sense of heaviness. That creates a sense of heaviness. Uh, you know, Sometimes we carry things. We carry things and we've gotten used to carrying things because we've carried them for so long. And sometimes we get to a point where, oh my goodness, we feel like we can't go on much further because we feel burdened. Um, it's some other things that cause us to feel heavy, to feel burdened is, you know, hiding from God. Huh, gosh, like not being authentic, in terms of our relationship with with God, with our relationship with that which is holy and perfect and pure, because certainly there's plenty of stuff in this world and the living of our life and our life experience that doesn't feel so perfect, doesn't feel so pure, doesn't feel so light, right? There are a lot of things that we experience that, can throw us for a loop and we get bent out of shape over and caught by surprise or deeply disappointed by things or frustrated about things or anxious about things. And that can be really difficult to deal with sometimes. And the reality is that as much as we're people who are on a spiritual path, I've been on a spiritual path for a long time. If you're watching this, you're clearly on a spiritual path of some sort because you wouldn't have been led here to view this. And even in the midst of that, there are times where there's feelings of heaviness. There are times where you feel like, oh my goodness, I thought I was over this. I thought I was past this. Why am I still dealing with the same thing? Why am I feeling this way right now? Why, um, why am I still making these unhealthy decisions? Um, I feel like I should know better. Those things are things um, that cause us to feel heavy and cause us to feel burdened and weighed down. They keep us from being our best self. They keep us from being our truest self. And sometimes there have been things that other people have told us that we should be feeling a certain way. You know, Sometimes people will readily extend to us invitations for, to join on a guilt trip, and then when we arrive there, attend a pity party, right? Um, that happens in life. It's part of the human experience sometimes. And sometimes people don't mean to do that, but it's just based on where they are, wherever it is that they are. And sometimes you do that. And it's just based on wherever it is that you are in that moment, wherever it is that you are in that moment. And sometimes I know in my life, I've definitely done this where I'm like, okay, I'm a spiritual person. I've been on a spiritual journey for a minute. This is not my first rodeo, um, but in that somehow getting this actually a little bit of a twisted idea that because I'm on this spiritual journey, I shouldn't be feeling this way. Okay. And you may not even give yourself permission to feel down or permission to feel upset or permission to feel disappointed or for permission to feel, off your center somehow. Right. Um, And so, those things happen sometimes, and we, can have some difficulty with that. It can certainly, it can certainly be a challenge. It can certainly be a challenge sometimes, and we might avoid that. We might tell ourselves a little fib, say, "I'm not really upset." I'm not really bothered that this person crossed my boundaries. Um, I'm not really upset that I didn't establish healthy boundaries in the first place. Um, I'm not really heartbroken. I'm not really bothered by the fact that this family member, you know, is no longer here in the physical. you know, Not really bothered that this person cheated on me or that this relationship ended. I'm not really disappointed. Whatever the feeling is, there are times where we don't even give ourselves permission to feel the feelings that are actually there. The feelings are there, but we're not giving ourselves permission to feel them. We might end up trying to self medicate and cover those feelings in different areas. We might try to cover them or mask them with, um, hey, Thanksgiving was just the other day. We might try to mask them with emotional eating sometimes, not just on Thanksgiving, by the way. We might try to self-medicate through recreational drugs or alcohol. We might try to self-medicate uh, through sex or pornography. We might try to self-medicate. Ooh, big one right here. These devices, these phones and tablets and stuff. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, all of these different things. And that doesn't mean to say that those things don't have place or don't have a place or don't have an opportunity to be used in a healthy way. But a lot of times we'll use them in ways that, where we can maybe be a little bit of in excess. We get these notifications on our phone, and what happens is that there's a little bit of a dopamine kick that kicks in. Okay. And, different things happen to give us this little reward. That's what dopamine is. It's like a reward. Um, it's like a reward hormone or a reward chemical that's released in the brain, that makes you feel good for a moment. Okay. And so we do these things to, kind of escape some of the feelings so that we don't have to feel the feelings that we're actually having. We don't have to feel the feelings that are actually there. But I want to encourage all of us to allow ourselves to be wherever it is that we are. Wherever it is that we are, even if that thing feels heavy or feels difficult. Yesterday, I was caught by surprise. I just started feeling like really down. Started feeling like really down. Um, and there are a few different things that were contributing to that, and I won't go into the all of the details and specifics of those right now. But um, I was just feeling a sadness that caught me by surprise, quite frankly. And then I started talking with God about it, and I felt really a need to like have an emotional release of some sort. And I mean that didn't end up happening. I my energy felt real low. Um, I just was not shining the way that I normally like to shine. And so, uh, I ended up talking with God about it, and saying how I was feeling. And then, on some ways, I'm feeling bad that I'm even feeling that way. I'm thinking about these folks that don't have anybody, you know, folks who are on the street and don't have anybody that they could turn to, you know, who their reality is much worse than mine. Um, And so then, I started on some level feeling a little bit guilty about feeling the way that I was feeling. And I had to give myself permission to own that whether or not felt like I should or thought that I should be feeling that way, how I felt was still how I felt. And that was the reality of the moment. And, I did, as these other folks started coming to mind, I did find myself praying for them. And I mean, there was some value in that clearly, but um, the reality is that I was having a moment. I was definitely having a moment that was less than pleasant. Um, and I ended up getting out of it, but that was as I was preparing to speak today. And like I said, it's not uncommon for me to have to experience what it is I'm about to talk about. Even though I've maybe experienced similar things before, it's not uncommon for me to have to live the message um, as I'm preparing to deliver the message. Um, that just seems to be a truth of my journey. Um, and, I mean, the long and the short of it was, I was experiencing some, uh, feeling kind of down and disappointed about some stuff. And, um, you know, feeling, somewhat isolated and somewhat lonely in some different ways. And, uh, but I had to allow myself to feel that. But those were things that, they were kind of weighed me down. I was feeling laid down. I was feeling weighed down, excuse me. I was feeling depleted. You may have some areas in your life or some time and situations in your life where you're feeling weighed down by stuff. Like I said, shame, guilt. Those are things that can weigh you down. Um, mm, Shutting yourself off from love is something that can weigh you down. Mm, it's something that can weigh you down. Um, Boy, yeah. Sometimes we want something and then we push the thing that we want away sometimes for whatever reason. Hiding from God is something that can make us uh, be and feel weighed down. You know, Maybe we've done something that we don't feel so great about, and then we're instead of talking with God about it, who knows about it anyway, we try to act like it didn't exist, or then we go further in the opposite direction. The story in the Bible that speaks to this kind of thing, about Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And they ate of the forbidden fruit that was not an apple, by the way. Um, and really the whole idea with that is that they were led to do something that would generate in them a sense of shame. And out of that sense of shame, they would hide from God, turn away from God's presence. And then is in the presence of God that we're connected to power, to real power, to true power. And so the enemy of our souls doesn't want us to feel connected to the power. Um, and wants us to be in this victim mode and in this sense of desperation and then this sense of hopelessness. But the reality is that God is here and available to set us free. To set us free. I shared this morning that in 1701, long time ago, in 1701, a French explorer by the name of Antoine de la Mothe Cadillac was traveling. There was this body of water referred to as a strait that separated or divided the United States from Canada. And he founded there a fort. It was used for shipping and such. And the name of that fort, what he named that fort in 1701, was Fort Pontchartrain de Detroit. And from that came the name of the beloved city that I hail from, although I don't live there anymore, Detroit. Detroit is Detroit in how we pronounce it in English. And what Detroit means is the strait, body of water, um, similar to a river. And so the city of Detroit, the city of Detroit, sits on Detroit. It sits on the strait that is between the United States and Canada. One of the few places where you actually have to travel south from in the United States, where you have to actually travel south to get to Canada. If you're in Detroit and you go to Canada, you have to travel south to get there. But it was founded in 1701, and 258 years later, there was a wonderful statue done by a sculptor by the name of Marshall M. Fredericks. This sculpture is made of brass. It's large uh, and it's heavy. And it sits at the City County building in Detroit, named the Coleman A. Young Municipal Center, named after Detroit's first African American mayor, Coleman A. Young. And the statue is a man. He's seated. In one hand, he holds the sun with rays of light emanating from it. In his other hand, he holds people, and the people are representing the people, right? The people are representing the people. And there's a scripture behind this statue. And the scripture comes from 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 17, which reads, "Now the Lord is that Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty." Now the Lord is that Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. And so that statue has been named the Spirit of Detroit, based on that in connection with that scripture that sits behind it. And so, I hail from Detroit. Like I said, Detroit is, there are many things that Detroit is known for besides crime. Detroit is known for being the Motor City. Why is it called the Motor City? Because the three largest automobile companies in the whole entire world are all based in the city of Detroit. They're all three. The three largest automotive companies in the world are all based in Detroit. Interesting fact, although the city of Detroit was founded by Monsieur Cadillac. Cadillac is a GM vehicle, but it was actually one of the people who actually designed the Cadillac was actually Henry Ford, who's over, the Ford family is and has been, over Ford Motor Company. But that's anyway, that's, I thought, a little interesting tidbit. But Detroit has, when my grandfather, sent by my, was advised as a result of my grandmother's, if I remember correctly, my grandmother's Aunt Helen. They were young, they had just gotten married. They were married on Christmas Day in 1949. They were married for well over 60 years. They lived in Alabama. Okay, they're from Birmingham and Fairfield, Alabama. Fairfield being a suburb just outside of Birmingham. And, it was mentioned for my grandfather to go to Detroit because there were jobs in Detroit with the automotive industry. Okay, and my grandfather, as I shared this morning, got on the train heading to Detroit, this new land of opportunity, with $10 in his pocket and a fire in his belly. And when he got there, he had less than the $10 because, had something to eat and had something to drink on the way there. Um, and he started working as a porter with General Motors, a job that he ended up hating, and as a result, ended up going into, leaving that job and going into business, and ended up being a rather successful businessman with several different business ventures and enterprises. And was able to take really good care of my grandmother, my mother, and uncle. And so, uh, where am I going with this? Where am I going with this? That in a lot of ways, Detroit has lived on the heyday of the past. When my grandfather and grandmother first got settled in Detroit, you couldn't find a place to live. There are almost 2 million people living in the city of Detroit because all of these people were traveling from Alabama and Georgia and Mississippi and Louisiana, um, and other southern states, to this land of opportunity that was Detroit, Michigan, and get a job with one of the automotive companies. The reality is that where it was almost 2 million people um, 70 years ago, there are just over 600,000 people living in the city of Detroit now, right? Um, and there is new development taking place, and the city is trying to swing back, and I'm very happy about that and thankful for that. But a lot of times, General Motors is, like I said, based in Detroit. Most iconic building in Detroit, the Renaissance Center, is now the home of uh, the General Motors headquarters. Um, Buick is a division of General Motors, and yet the Buick Encore is made in Korea. Even American makes, even companies that are American auto manufacturers are having cars built in other parts of the world in some situations because it's cheaper to do that. And so, um, in many different ways, the city has experienced urban blight, you know, attempted to live off heyday from the past, and it's not there anymore. There may be some situations in your life where things that were once thriving aren't thriving in your life so much anymore. There may be some things that you experienced back in the day. You might have been the man back in the day. You might have been the woman back in the day. But maybe things aren't the way that they are anymore, you know. Maybe some hair has turned gray and some things have fallen due to gravity over the years. Maybe you were popular in high school or in college or on your block, and that season has maybe come to an end, and you're still telling those stories and living off of that former glory from the past, and don't seem to be able to move forward very much at this point in your life. And maybe there's some things that you need to let go of. Maybe there's shame, and maybe there's guilt and stuff that needs to be let go of. Maybe there's some unrepented sin simply meaning missing the mark. We all miss the mark in some ways, and the idea isn't for us to be judged by ourselves or other people, but for us to recognize, okay, we made a mistake. Let's get it right. Let's work to get it right. Okay. Let's work to get people who are in recovery. You know, an alcoholic isn't always an alcoholic. They may be sober, but they may just be in recovery for 8 months or 6 years or however long. And then sometimes the person may do that thing that that they're recovering from, and then they're back there again. And while you don't want to revisit that, you can still start afresh again. Some people may, engage in the practice of fasting and prayer, and may intend to fast for X period of time, or X amount of time, and may end up giving in, or on a diet, end up giving in, or on a workout routine or exercise routine, and end up missing a time that they were supposed to do something. And yeah, well, that's not necessarily the ideal. You can still start anew. You can still start afresh. There might be something that you've done that you feel like you should know better, but you do something anyway. You can still turn over a new leaf. You can still choose to do differently. Don't use that as an excuse to turn your face from God, because God is continually turning towards you. God didn't leave Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. God didn't turn away from them. They turned away from God. God is always seeking to beckon us, to love on us, to bring us, to draw us unto God's self, and thus unto our truest versions of ourselves, right? There are things that dim our light too, not just things that weigh us down, but there are also things that dim our light. Feelings of resentment, feelings of uh, wanting to seek revenge, wanting to do somebody in, right? Maybe somebody did something that ticked us off, and we want to get them back. And if we don't want to get them back, maybe we want to see somebody else get them back. Maybe we want God to get them back, pay them back for the harm that was done to us. And I'll tell you, God and I have an agreement. It was established a long time ago. Anything anybody intends towards me, whether it be for good or for evil, returns to them double. I never want to see anything bad happen to people, even folk who do me wrong. But the reality is that when folk do me wrong, foul stuff happens. Usually it's the same kind of thing that they've done to me ends up happening to them, through somebody else. Sometimes it happens real quickly too. But I never want to see that happen to people. Um, and so God is helping me to maintain a pure heart, even in the midst of my difficulty, or in the midst of my uh, experiences of being wronged, what I feel is being wronged in some way. The reality is, we teach people how to treat us. The reality is, um, the stuff that we're doing to somebody, there might be some way, or excuse me, the stuff that somebody's doing to us, there might be some way where we're doing some version of that to somebody else. And if not somebody else, there may be some way where we're doing some version of that to ourselves, right? Where we're doing some version of that to ourselves. And then we kind of project some stuff on other people. You know, I maintain that nobody else can irritate me. If I'm irritated, yeah, there can be something that somebody does that I feel irritated or pissed off about. But the reality is, if I'm feeling irritated, the irritation existed within me, and they're just triggering it. Okay, it's just pointing to some areas where there's some unhealed in me that needs to be dealt with. What's another thing that can dim your light? Getting out of your own lane, trying to control other folks, putting your standards on other people, judging them for not reaching up to or living up to your expectations, you know, having issues with folks because they choose to utilize their free will in a way that's different than how you choose to utilize your free will. I'm not telling you what I heard or read about somewhere. I'm telling you what I know, even through my own experience, right? I own that. I own that, you know. Um, I really do believe that there are things that we need to be doing. There are things that God calls us to do. There are things I remember hearing um, a preacher say a long time ago. Uh, Sometimes we'll pray for something. God doesn't give us exactly the thing that we prayed for in the way that we want it, but God gives us what we need to get it. You gave an example of praying for orange juice and person getting upset because God didn't give them orange juice, but God gave them an orange orchard or an orange grove, right? And so you have what's necessary to make the orange juice yourself. And yeah, there are things that that same person, pastor, shared that when he went away to college, his grandmother, who called him Sonny, said, "Sonny, when you get down there to school, I want you to get down on your knees and pray as if everything depends on God. And then when you get up, when you get done praying, I want you to get up off your knees and work as if everything depends on you." And so, yes, there is a component of work that's required of us. There's stuff that we're called to do. There are some areas where we're called to actually do something, right? But there are those areas where we do what we're to do and let God do what we can't do. And sometimes we try to help God out a little bit. If we're going to tell the truth about it, sometimes we try to help God out a little bit and give God a little hand where God didn't ask for our hand in that particular situation. What we're really doing is trying to get what it is that we want on our own terms and trying to control how that unfolds, right? Well, that can dim our light. That can definitely dim our light, okay? Unrepentant sin. It can cause us to feel weighed down, to feel heavy, to feel burdened, and it can also cause our light to be dimmed. We're called to be the children of the light. That's what it said in the Bible. We're children of the light. We're called to be light. And I want to encourage all of us to give ourselves permission to be light. On today, November 28th, 2021, whoever you are, wherever you are on the planet, I want to encourage you to give yourself permission to be light. Okay? Give yourself permission to be light. Because not being light has its consequences. And there are two ways that light shows up. Okay? And there are two ways that the absence of light shows up. The absence of light shows up in the form of heaviness and burdens. We were talking about that before, right? Heaviness and burden. Okay. And so, what are the effects of one allowing one's heart to stay heavy? Depression, feeling stagnated, inability to move forward, addiction, negative emotions. In fact, deterioration in our health, deterioration of our spiritual health, deterioration of our mental health slash emotional health, and deterioration of our physical health. Those are all those things are a function of us, um, you know, letting our hearts be heavy, letting our hearts be heavy. Okay. There are also effects of letting our light be dimmed too, that aren't so great. Emotional toxicity. And really, frankly, in a lot of ways, these things, one kind of speaks to how we are towards ourselves, other speaks to how we are towards others, and they're both really related in terms of the things that make our hearts heavy and the things that create in us a sense of um, our light growing dim, our light growing dim. Today, this evening is the first day of Hanukkah, and interesting story, and I believe it was 336 or 337 BC, there was this unjust ruler by the name of Antiochus IV. He had a little bit of an ego problem, so much so that he called himself Antiochus Epiphanes, which is essentially saying God manifest. He made it illegal basically to be a Jew. I won't get into all of the details of that story, but he went in and desecrated the temple, destroyed the temple. Um, the people were charged. The charge in the Bible, there's a Negro spiritual says, keep your lamps trimmed and burning, right? Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Let your light always shine. And there's a requirement to always keep the lights on in the temple, which points to the physical temple that, that the Jewish people would go to. And it also refers to this temple, right? There's a scripture where Jesus is quoted as saying, if you let your eye be single, your whole body will be filled with light, or will be full of light, right? We're talking about giving yourself permission to be light today, by the way. And so this was before the days of electricity, mind you, in 336 BC, I think. It was 330 something BC. And the lamps, the light was the function of these lamps. The lamps were oil lamps. The lamps were oil lamps. The oil was used to keep the lamps burning. Okay. And so just about all of the vials of oil were destroyed. There was only enough oil left to keep the light going for a day. But instead, that one day's worth of oil created light for 8 days. And that's the miracle of Hanukkah, right? That's the miracle of Hanukkah. There are times in our lives where things come up that seem almost certain to cause our light to go out. But there is a God who loves you, who cherishes you, who knows all about you, what you've been through, what you've done, why you've done what you've done based on what you've been through, and who is ever continually seeking to draw you in so that you may be the light that you are called to be, so that you won't let your light be put under a bushel, but that you'll raise it up for all to be able to see it, not for your glory, but so that other people will see your good works and glorify God. And they'll want to get some of that too, right? Right? This is how we reach people. This is how we serve as beacons of light, how we get to show up as extenders of God's goodness and grace and love and light, right? And so, yeah, there are many effects of letting one's light go dim. Emotional toxicity, alienating others. You know, difficulty maintaining healthy relationships, addictions, uncontrolled anger, fits of rage. Okay, and also deterioration of spiritual, mental, and physical health, right? All of these things are part of that, part of what shows up in that. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes there's stuff that happens. Sometimes there's times where resentment shows up. Sometimes there are situations where it's hard to forgive somebody. Sometimes there's situations where it's hard to forgive yourself. Sometimes most people don't even give themselves permission to own that they're upset with God. Although most people are, or at least have been at some point, because something that happened that is maybe difficult to understand, something that God allowed to happen, some area where we were impacted and in a way that was not something that we enjoyed. It was difficult for us to deal with, that we've maybe held on for a long time and has been traveling with us for years, for decades, right? All of us have some stuff. All of us have some baggage that we carry. All of us have some things that we've been through. And the key isn't to not deal with anybody who has no baggage at all, because there isn't a soul who hasn't accumulated baggage in the process of living as a human being on planet Earth. It comes with the territory. But the key is that we look for healthy ways to unpack it, and that we link up and connect with others that give us a safe space to unpack that stuff that we've been carrying. I heard a couple preachers share this story. I shared it earlier today. I'll share it again. Of uh, family was taking their child to college for the first time. They had the car loaded up. They had a trailer that they were pulling behind that had all the baggage they were taking to school. That was believed to be necessary, and they're pulling it, behind the vehicle. And they had to travel through some mountains to get there. It was a road trip. They had to travel through some mountains to get there, and there were times where, based on the elevation of the mountain and how steep the incline, where it was really a struggle for the vehicle. A lot of pressure on the engine to be able to go forward and to be able to move forward. And finally, it came to a point where they couldn't. The vehicle was just not going any further. Giving it all the gas they could, the vehicle just was not moving forward anymore. And they had to make a decision. And the decision that they had to make was whether to stay stuck where they were, or whether to unhitch the baggage, to unhitch that heavy load. They thought that they needed the stuff. It had been part of their life for a long time. It felt like it was important to be able to carry that with them, or necessary, or felt they needed to carry it with them for some reason. You know, sometimes sometimes growth can feel odd and feel difficult and feel odd because it's unfamiliar territory. It's unfamiliar territory. And with that unfamiliar territory, that can sometimes create some sense of fear. Even if the familiar territory is hellacious, we could be going through hell sometimes, but not want to leave that situation because it's familiar. It's become like a companion that we can count on always being there. As unhealthy as it is, it's a reality for the human experience for us a lot of times. And sometimes because of that, it can be difficult or scary even for us to grow, to move into something different, to move in something more expanded, more healthy. And so it can feel odd. It can feel like a dark night of the soul sometimes. It can feel lonely, you know. It can feel, you can feel maybe kind of cut off, sometimes in those situations. But the reality is that those situations and those moments didn't come to stay. They came to pass. They came to pass. And, you know, you will get to a point where you'll get past whatever that thing is that's been weighing you down, or whatever that thing is that's been dimming your light. But I want to encourage you to give yourself permission to allow for that. Give yourself permission to allow for that. We are called to be light. Light both in terms of light-hearted and light in terms of emanating light. Okay, that's how we have the grandest version of what is possible in our life experience. That's how we can truly live our best life. People post stuff on social media all the time, that's an illusion of their life, or what they want their life to be, or what they want their life to look like. Um, and that may be far from what their life actually is, but God wants us to all actually be able to have the life of our dreams, the life that exceeds our dreams. I've experienced some things in my life recently that have been absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I feel like the hell that I've been through in different areas of my life has been absolutely worth it. And yet there are times where I have to own, I don't even like admitting it to myself. I have to own that sometimes subconsciously may have ways of not fully receiving it, right? I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to tell the truth about it. It might free somebody else up. But I want to again encourage all of us to be the light, to be the light. I shared with you earlier about something a long time ago. My hometown of Detroit, Michigan was founded, I believe the date was July 24th, 1701. That was a long time ago. Long time ago. Um, Even longer than that, there were folks in ancient Kemet or ancient Egypt that painted these pictures inside of caves like 2500 BC, over 4,500 years ago. And there's this one portion, I actually even have it. You can't really see too much of it. You can kind of see the corner of it. I have a tapestry on my wall. It points to this for me, something significant for me. Um, and it's a reminder for me of something that I need to continuously remind myself of and be reminded of. And anyway, this it's like a story, and this particular portion is referred to as Judgment Day or the Day of Reckoning, and it's like where this person is passed and they're being led into the judgment chamber by that which represents, in this context, like divine truth or justice. Um, and they're led into this judgment chamber. And in the judgment chamber, there's this large scale. And sitting on top of this large scale is represented as divine wisdom. And on one side of the scale is placed the person's heart. On the other side of the scale is placed a feather. And like the idea of this is that one can experience what I sometimes refer to as the sustainable state of supreme satisfaction, or what is often referred to as heaven. Um, if they've come to a point of allowing their heart to be no heavier than that of the feather, right? No heavier than that of the feather. This symbology is very significant for me. Um, not that I'm one who like believes in Egyptian deities or anything like that, but I happen to have been born uh, on September 23rd, 1971, um, in the evening, and my mother had been in labor with me for 21 hours. I was born September 23rd, uh, 8:25 in the evening, and had I and then when I was born under the sign of Libra. Had I been born at 11 o'clock that morning, I would have been born under the sign of Taurus. But I end up, my mother was in labor with me then, but I ended up being born, later on that evening under the sign of Libra. The symbol for the sign of Libra is the scales. In fact, the abbreviation for pounds, LBS, as a kid, I never understood. There's no L and there's no B in the word pound. So why is the abbreviation for pound LBS? Well, the reason for that is because LBS is actually short for Libras. That's actually what LBS is actually an abbreviation for. Um, but the sign of Libra is represented by the scales. I was given the name Royce. Royce literally means the son of the king. All right. My last name is Thomason. Thomason. That comes from Thomas's son. Thomas was one of the disciples. Specifically, he was the disciple who needed proof through verifiable means that Jesus was risen from the dead. Okay. And so, like, I look at my name and I believe that there's value in people's names in terms of their destiny, who they're called to be, and things of that nature. Um, and for whatever reason, God saw fit for me to be named a son of the King and son of Thomas. And the way I translate that is I'm a light that shines in the darkness to reveal the presence and the authority of the King, God. Okay. And I'm here in this life experience as this human being on planet Earth at this time, in the latter part of the 20th century and this part of the 21st century, to prove that to myself through verifiable means. If you've been here before, you probably know, of my work in the realm of healing. And for a long time, after coming to that realization about myself and my name, the meaning of that, I thought that the significance of how I prove to myself through verifiable means that that I am this light shining for God, was through the healing. And the reality is that, I mean, that's a component. That's part of my life purpose, part of how I serve um, humanity, or serve God through humanity. But the reality is there was a missing component, and that's my middle name. I talked about my first name and my last name, but in the balance between my first name and my last name is my middle name, which is Fletcher. And Fletcher literally means feather. It literally means feather. And so a reality in my life is that where I've always been one who sought to do right by people, maybe not always, but at least for a long time, sought to do right by people, sought to do the right thing, and and still falling short in the midst of it. I've been subject to guilt, feeling guilty, to beating up on myself for things that didn't work out right in my life, or for failures that I've had, or for not being further along in my life than I felt like I should be or should have been. Um, and, God had to show me, yes, I created you and called you to be a light that shines in the darkness, to reveal the presence and the authority of me in the midst of that. You know, I've called you to do that. And yes, you are here in this life experience to know that for yourself. To know that for yourself, you need evidence of it in your life. Based on your nature, you need evidence of that. But how you get that, what is in the balance of that, is that you allow your heart to be light as a feather. That you allow yourself to lay down any self-judgment, that you don't allow yourself to be weighed down by guilt or shame, or by things that by strongholds that you uh, are allowing to hold on to you because you feel some level of benefit from it. Whoo! I didn't even want to say that, but it's true. It's true. And every time I, see that, it's in my, my dining area. It reminds me, let my heart stay light. Let my heart stay light. Give myself permission to be lighthearted. I happen to be a person who can overthink things. I happen to be a person, and part of that is because I really care. I really care about people. I really care about stuff. One of the things that's where I'm really true to my sign, so to speak, is that I really weigh things out. you know, kind of known for diplomacy and um, don't really make too many rush decisions because I don't want to have to regret it later. Now that doesn't mean that I can't be spontaneous because I definitely can be that. But you know, uh, a reality is that, there are aspects that, um, I have been prone to feeling guilty about stuff that hasn't even been my fault. There have been times where folk have wronged me and I felt bad about, like I did something wrong, you know. Shoot, there have been times where folk have done me wrong, and I literally prayed to experience the hardship that they were due for the pain that they caused me, so that they wouldn't have to endure it. What's that all about, right? At any rate, every time I see that, every time I look at that, it's a reminder. There's some stuff that you're holding on to. Let it go. The way that you can really be who God has created you and called you to be. Let stuff go. And to let stuff go, you actually have to allow yourself to feel stuff sometimes. There have been times where there were things I didn't allow myself to feel because I thought I was too spiritual to need to be going through that. Okay. I thought that it was strong for me to not feel a certain way. The reality is that wasn't strength, it was denial, is what it was. It was denial. I was in denial. Um, and things that you don't allow the light to shine on, mm, it stays waiting to be dealt with. The stuff areas where you don't shine light are areas where there's still some unhealed stuff that needs to be addressed. When you shine the light on it, that's where the healing takes place. And so, I maintain that really all sickness, all dis-ease is the form of a darkness in some form. And the reality is, there are things that we've experienced in our lives. There are things that have come up in our lives where we have, in one way or another, kind of shut ourselves off from the light of God's love in that area. And um, and there are tapes that play in our minds that tell us that we're not worthy of something good, or we don't deserve something good, or that we're um, somehow inadequate, in different areas, based on different things that happen to us. You know, there are things that we carry with us that happen in the womb that we're not even consciously aware of, but subconsciously they are there and they show up and they manifest in different ways until it is that we shine some light on it and get some healing in that area. And so we have areas where we, kind of cut ourselves off, shut ourselves off, trying to protect ourselves. There are areas where we tuck certain life experiences away. We might even tuck them away so deep that we don't even have conscious recollection of them because maybe they hurt. And so um, we're trying to protect ourselves. Maybe we don't let people in. And I'm not saying that not everybody really deserves to have a front row seat to your life. Not everybody's going to handle that responsibly. Not everybody really deserves to be in your inner circle, so to speak. Not everybody deserves to know all of your business. Okay. Um, so don't get me wrong on that. But I do believe that we are made to love and to be loved. That's how God made us. In fact, what like in the Bible, what it says, the basis for dwelling in God is dwelling in love. It says that the God is love, and they that dwell in love dwell in God. It doesn't even say they that dwell in a belief system. They that dwell in the company of certain people. They that dwell in the right organizations. Doesn't say that. It says they that dwell in love dwell in God, right? And so we're called to be love. We're called to be loving and to be loved, right? To love and to be loved. Like this is like the purpose of coming here. Mm. And to shine to let the love light shine through our lives. And sometimes there are dark experiences that we have. Well, guess what? You light a candle in a sun and you won't see it. You won't be able to tell it's light. You shine a candle in a very dark room and the light will be very much evident. And so there are things that we have come to this earth. And I believe that God didn't send any of us here beyond our will to come. That each and every one of us came here on knowing on some level, maybe we don't consciously remember it, but knowing on some level that there would be some areas that would seem and feel like darkness that we'd step into. You know, that's part of the human experience. And that we'd be called to let our light still shine in those moments, to keep our lamps trimmed and burning in the midst of whatever it is that comes up. And though there might be some things that we experience that result in our light becoming dim, you know, we can still turn back to the light. We can still welcome the light of God's presence into certain areas. And the areas where we most feel pain, the areas where we most feel ashamed, the areas where we most feel hurt, the areas where we most feel disappointed, those are the areas where we most need to welcome in the light of God's love into that area. And when I say about give yourself permission to be light, I'm saying this in both senses of the word, in terms of be light, in terms of allowing yourself to rise and to shine and to be all that God created you to be. I think about this church song, this old church song, rise, shine, give God glory. We were created to be the light, and we were created to be light. Light, let me say it, light as in lighthearted. Okay. It's easy to take ourselves too seriously. Anybody else besides me ever done that? Taking yourself too seriously? You go overly thinking about stuff, or you're in the company of other people and you put on all these airs and stuff and like feel all self-important and stuff. Your life matters. Absolutely it does. And you have tremendous value. And at the same time, you're both tremendously significant and your life is in the big picture. You're just like a drop of water in the ocean of God. Each drop of water has its own value and significance. Each one is completely cherished by God. But not a single drop can ever compare to or outdo the total ocean, right? I mean, we're on this earth a few decades, right? My cousin's mom is 101 years old. She's 101. And we think of that as being pretty old. Well, guess what? I've seen trees that were 3,500 years old that are still living. You know, what's 100 years in comparison to 3,500 years? The tree was here when Moses was here. Remember I talked about the miracle of Hanukkah? I've seen trees that were here at the time of the miracle of Hanukkah. I've seen trees that were here at the time of Moses, right? Our lives are just a short bit of time. And in this little bit of time that we have here, I want to encourage all of us to give ourselves permission to be light. You know, life is too important to take it too seriously. Allow yourself to be lighthearted. Allow yourself permission to find things to laugh about and to celebrate, even to be able to laugh at your own mistakes and your own shortcomings. Yesterday, how I was feeling was not good. I was not digging it at all. I was not digging it at all. But I can genuinely laugh at myself today, you know, for where I was yesterday. Yeah, I've said that I am no longer accepting invitations to guilt trips or to pity parties. Every once in a while, though, I'll throw myself one. I'll throw myself one. Sitting up here in my apartment each day in and day out. Kind of solo. I live by myself. Um, I work at home on the computer. Um, even when I'm teaching or ministering, I'm looking at a green dot on my computer. It's not the same thing as being present with people, looking into people's eyes, and um, being able to get some feeling for the room, and make that eye connection, saying something that somebody really needs to hear. It's a little bit different when you're on the computer, right? The exchange of energy is a little bit different. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm there's certainly things I've missed. There are things that just don't necessarily feel that great sometimes. But I mean, I can look back, and that's where I was yesterday. I was in kind of a dark place, preparing for this. And I know that I had to go there in order to be able to deliver this place from the place I needed to deliver it from, right? And so here I am today, and last night I was feeling much, much better. It's feeling much, much, much better, and I'm feeling much, much better now. And I thank you, God, for that. And for any of you who might be feeling weighed down, for any of you who might be feeling your own light dimming, maybe you're in a situation where you don't feel like you can really be yourself. And maybe it is that you can be yourself, but you just don't think you can because you've been yourself before and there is a price to pay for it. I've definitely been there. Um, but I want to encourage you to give yourself permission to be your true self. There may be some dead weight in your life that's hanging on that you may need to release. It may be a person, it may be a relationship, it may be a job, it may be a situation. And I don't want you to just do this haphazardly. I do encourage you to genuinely and earnestly pray about it, and listen to the voice of God with an open mind and open heart. Listen to the voice of God speaking back to you and giving you direction. God is wanting to direct you in the way that is going to serve the highest and best good for you and for everybody involved. And so I encourage you to genuinely and sincerely talk with God about whatever it is that's concerning you, because God is perfecting the things that are concerning you. There are things that God is working out in the background that you have no idea about, And something might just happen that catches you by surprise and just lights up your day, lights up your world. I know I've experienced that. Oh God, I've experienced it. And I'm so deeply thankful to God for it. So thankful to God for it. And so, beloved, if there's an area in your life that you've kind of closed off, there's some burden that you're carrying, I want you to welcome God into whatever life area that is. If there's depression, I want you to invite God into your depression, into the space where you're holding that depression. You know, God's presence makes everything better. Everything better. And it's like we do things, and there are things that we want and we try to do on our own. We take some shortcuts in some areas. Um, but everything God's way is better. Everything with God's presence in it is better. Oh, it's so much better. So I want you to invite the presence of God into whatever area of your life that you've been maybe a little closed off. Maybe you felt hurt. Maybe you've been disappointed. Maybe you've been rejected or felt rejected or abandoned. Maybe maybe you're judging yourself. I want to encourage you to invite God into that space and let the light of God's love shine there. Okay, God wants to enter into the space where you're feeling pain, where you're holding on to pain. God wants to show up in the space where there's resentment or bitterness or animosity or hostility. God is not a punk. There isn't anything that you're going through that is too difficult for God, too heavy for God, or that God is just gonna say, no, this is too much. I can't handle this. There's nothing, I mean, God, think about it. You are here as a result of a single sperm cell fertilizing a single egg cell. The time the sperm cell that end up making you was released, there are about 200 to 400 other million others, and none of them made it. Your mom's body was designed to treat each and every one of them as some foreign agent. There is an infection to fight it off and destroy it. And that sperm cell overcame that adversity. And from that one fertilized egg cell grew all of the cells of your body, all of the systems of your body, all working, all doing their own thing. You breathe and don't even have to think about it. You eat food, and that food transforms into hair and nails and muscle and skin and new cells. You get a whole new body every 7 years. Totally new body, all these different new cells, right? And so that is a function of the infinite mind of God. The infinite mind of God. God called the heavens and the earth into being, and the billions of trillions of stars and all of the planets everywhere into being. There's nothing. The little problems that we have aren't things that will intimidate God. And sometimes we have our feelings of worthiness that we think God can do it, but maybe God just doesn't want to. I want to invite us even into that space. I want us to even invite God into that space, to let God's love and God's light shine there. And any burden that you might be carrying, I want you to lay it down, hand it over to God. There's some things that you can carry, and there's some things that you think make you strong to carry. There's some things that you being able to let go of is where the proof of your strength really shows up, right? Some things that you say, there's some things that you need to say goodbye to. Some things but the past that you need to say goodbye to. Animosity towards other people, you may need to say goodbye to. Self-condemnation, you may need to say goodbye to. That isn't easy to do. Weak people can't do that. And so they stay stuck where they are. But God called us to rise up, to shine, to be an embodiment, a living embodiment of the love and the light of God. And I want to invite all of us to give ourselves permission to do that. You may fall short along the way. Still give yourself permission. You might do some things that you feel like you know better than. Give yourself permission to get back up. You might have moments of self-doubt going forward. That's okay. Forgive yourself. Keep on moving. Keep on moving. Don't stop. Stand the test of time. It's the DJ in me. I love you. I pray God's blessings upon you. In fact, God, thank you so much for everybody who's here today, viewing this live right now, everybody who stopped by and who isn't here now, everybody who will view it in a future playback. I thank you for each and every one of them. And God, I thank you mostly, though, for you. Thank you for the love and the light that you are. Thank you for the magnificence in which you created us. Thank you, God, that you are well able to handle any burden that we lay over to you. We don't have to try to do everything in our own strength. We can count on you. We don't have to let our light grow dim. We can shine, and that's okay. And whereas some people aren't necessarily in a position to be able to handle the light that emanates through us, it's not really our light, it's your light. But may we give ourselves permission to be the light and shine it in the places where people can receive it. Shine it in the places where people can receive it. We don't have to impose it on anybody, but there are folk who are looking for who it is that we are, what it is that we bring to the table, and direct us to those folks, God. Allow us to be all that you've called us to be. Allow us to rise up because we're light. We're light. Allow us to shine because we're light. We're light. Allow us to be a beacon of light. And God, keep us humble enough to know that there's no light in us aside from you, that you are the light and you are the love. And so may we ever stay mindful of where the power really comes from, or where the light really comes from, where the love really comes from. All of that, God, comes from you. And we thank you. And we give honor to you for that. Ashe and amen. All right. Karen Day Wright, Shock Diamonds, Curly Conscious Brother, whoever else is here. I see that you all have made comments in the chat. I honor you. I send love from my heart and light to you. And I pray that God's richest blessings just drizzle upon you. May liquid light be showered upon you, and an abundance of love. God bless you guys. I love you, and may we keep on keeping on and giving ourselves permission to be light. Peace and love.